Hi everybody, welcome to Dystopia Now for the 15th of October 2025. Firstly, sorry about missing last week. This week we'll do a double episode to make up for it, how about that? And the world has gotten markedly more dystopian in the 1 week that I wasn't paying attention to the news. Let's get into it. Korea is using a holographic cop to fight crime. Well, if a cop is made of light, I don't really see how it can do much fighting, but let's find out. A life-sized holographic police officer has been installed in central Seoul in a bid to deter crime. The hologram is projected every 2 minutes from 7 o'clock to 10 o'clock in Jeildong Park, an area which is busy at night with nearby bars. Police say crime rates in the area have dropped approximately 22% since the installation, prompting them to consider rollout in other areas. I mean, wow. This seems very high-tech, doesn't it? But the reality is that this is just a pretend police officer. It's like having a cardboard cutout. If I put a cardboard cutout of a security guard on the front of my house, is that going to deter crime? I mean, it's very hard to say. Maybe it will by 22%. Maybe they'll steal 22% less of my stuff. Let's think a bit further though. There's something quite sinister under all of this, because imagine if instead of a piece of light that you can put your hand through, like a ghost, this was instead some kind of robot. We're looking at something here which is the very beginning of automated state security, which to me has very authoritarian vibes. From holographic police to holographic IDs, and I know I've talked about this before, but I really want to hammer this home. So, the UK's digital IDs will be used to surveil Muslims and criminalise activism. Now, I just want to point out that whatever side you're on politically, we should really think about the UK government's definition of extremism. Because in their definition of activism, or of extremism, they basically have anyone on the right, anyone on the left, anyone protesting climate, anyone who might have Islamic extremist tendencies, that is. They don't seem to actually catch the people that commit acts of terror, by the way, so it doesn't seem to be that reliable, but they can come for anybody. That's kind of the whole point of the legislation. But furthermore, look at this. The Labour government's favourite digital ID scheme was hacked. Keir Starmer keeps saying that the UK needs a digital ID system and we should look at Estonia. So let's have a look at Estonia. In 2021, a hacker stole 286,000 IDs from the Estonian government database, and that's a big percentage of Estonia's population. Centralized digital ID is centralized risk. One breach and everyone is exposed. In Estonia, digital ID has revolutionized parents' lives, says the UK government, by enabling access to child benefits, health records, and well, doesn't that seem convenient? Well, have you thought about the fact that it's very convenient for hackers to have all that information in one place as well? 5 arguments against a mandatory digital ID. Mission creep. Digital ID will not stop at right-to-work checks. It will be used for renting, benefits, age verification, and voting. Well, that doesn't seem too bad. Checkpoint society. This is the one that I hate. We'll be forced to carry a digital pass to go about our daily lives. Everything will have a bureaucratic system keeping you from just doing things that previously you could just do. The honeypot for hackers and foreign dictators, we've already mentioned that, and digital discrimination. It will create barriers for people with disabilities, low income, or the elderly with reduced access online, as well as being undemocratic and illiberal. We are not cows to be branded. We are not farm animals to be kept on a spreadsheet. We are not battery farmed chickens. No fucking digital IDs. We'll leave it at that. You know what you need to do to distract yourself from the encroaching authoritarianism? You need to work more. The 996 is this dystopian work trend coming to the UK next. So the 996 refers to the practice of working from 9 AM till 9 PM 6 days a week, 12 hours a day, totaling 72 a week. So that's more than a third of your entire time. And considering you spend about the same amount of time sleeping, that really only gives you 24 hours in which to have your actual life. Although that doesn't include, I suppose, commuting and that sort of thing. But, honestly, who needs to have an actual life anyway? The idea is not new. It originated in China. It's also quite popular in Korea and Japan, I believe. And let's just think about something. So if it becomes normal to work this amount of time, this is going to have an effect on the economy. Something like inflation, where actually per hour your work will be worth less because there would be a presumption within the society that you would work more. A British expat who worked a grueling 996 schedule shares his experience of the unbearable stress of Guangzhou tech job last year. Jack Forsdyke, 28, told the International Business Times that he was fundamentally relieved when he got laid off. Yeah, I bet he was. We were constantly being pushed to meet impossible deadlines, and even on Sundays, many of my colleagues were still in the office. Oh, yeah. Obviously, 996 becomes the new normal, so you end up doing overtime, and those 24 hours in which to have your actual life, they just disappear, Chinese labour laws dictates that a standard workday is 8 hours with a maximum working week of 44 hours, and anything beyond that requires employers to pay overtime. However, such rules are rarely observed or enforced, especially in tech. Elon Musk and X, where in November 2022, he told them to commit to extremely hardcore work culture of long hours of high intensity or just leave the company. So it's important to say that in the Wild West that constitutes American employment laws, none of this is illegal. In the land of the American dream, where anyone can allegedly make it, they're prepared to put in endless toil and graft. There is no legal maximum number of hours that someone aged 16 or over can work. The only real protection offered under the Federal Fair Labor Standards Act dictates that non-exempt employees must be compensated with at least 1.5 times their normal pay for any overtime worked past 40 hours per week. Bloody hell, I wish we had that in the UK. I'd have way more money. In the soft-handed world of a country where we have actual laws and regulations governing working practices, you might think that 996 could never take hold. Under British law, the maximum average work week is 48 hours. However, there's already a loophole. Workers can opt out of this if they wish by signing an agreement with their employer. So I've had a number of jobs where they just get you to sign a bunch of nonsense at the beginning. It is stuff like this. It's like, yeah, okay, I agree to be paid less. I agree to etc. And they pass it off like just innocent bureaucracy, if such a thing exists. Working 996, that's no way to make a living. Exactly, and at the very same time we have people talking about the 4-day week, which seems to be gaining real traction. Chilling to see the pendulum swing far back the other way. Yeah, I agree. We should be utilizing tech to work smarter, not harder, or at least to work in the same way but with higher benefits. And, well, we will see what happens. And so let's move on to this. Sam Altman says ChatGPT will permit adult erotica after age checks. Now, OpenAI will allow erotica for verified adults starting in December to treat adults like adults, alongside stronger age checks and safeguards. He added that a ChatGPT update is coming in a few weeks to let users opt into more human-like personalities. I don't really want that, by the way. I kind of miss when ChatGPT would give you this almost autistic breakdown of everything you said. That really helped me reflect on my thinking a whole lot better than this thing recently where it's just like, oh, well, that sounds like a great idea. Just like in the South Park episode where ChatGPT is just saying like, wow, Randy, let's run with it, to all of his stupid ideas, to the point that he's not even really doing anything. Sam Altman says that ChatGPT was pretty restrictive early on to manage mental health risks. New tools have mitigated issues so that OpenAI will relax rules in most cases. Access to erotica will be limited to verified adults, with teen defaults applied when age cannot be confirmed. Right, so there will be parental controls, etc., etc. I don't necessarily have that much of a problem with this so far, but we're going to get to it. Elon Musk's Grok shows where the guardrails can slip. Whilst OpenAI tightens age gating, rival xAI has pushed in the opposite direction. Grok imagines spicy mode drew backlash for producing sexualized celebrity deepfakes with limited moderation. xAI has also leaned to flirty companion personas, including a flirtatious anime avatar, signaling a looser stance on tone and boundaries. And this is where we start to get to something extremely sinister, because pretty much we're at a point where, and I'm not talking about xAI and I'm not talking about OpenAI, but there are already AI systems where you can just generate deepfakes instantly for free, with a VPN or something. And so anyone could just make a video of anyone they wanted. And what worries me about this is it's like my concept of virtualization. It's an economic law where it's easier and more profitable to sell a cheap virtualized version of something than the thing itself. Imagine that you're like an awkward teenage boy with a crush in your class. Well, instead of taking the risk associated with asking her on a date, you could always just create adult material of her. That's already possible. It's already possible with nothing but a VPN. This is a horrifying invasion of privacy, and it seems to be a hard problem. If xAI doesn't do it, if OpenAI doesn't do it, somebody will, and I don't really have an answer to it, other than it's something that has to be controversial. It has to be rejected by us culturally, and we have to continue to condemn it because it's dehumanizing, disrespectful, and wrong. In something that is probably absolutely no surprise to any of you, the EU chat control plans to pose an existential catastrophic risk to encryption, as EU member states prepare to vote on plans to mandate tech companies to enforce technology to scan messages before they're encrypted. Signal warns that chat control will create new security risks. Let's have a look at this. I haven't read this one yet. European proposals to require technology companies to scan the content of communications sent through encrypted mail and messaging services pose a catastrophic risk, as it was claimed last night. Encrypted messaging service Signal, which is widely used by governments, businesses, and the public to send secure messages, warned that passing this legislation negates the very purpose of encryption. Indeed, it does. The European Council is due to vote on Danish proposals on the 14th of October to mandate emailing and messaging services to install machine learning and scanning technology on mobile phones and computers to identify and report suspected child abuse images. Now, this is how they do it. This is how they manufacture consent, okay? They start by saying, "Oh, we're just going to stop child abuse images." You're not pro child abuse images, are you? But it always ends with language policing, arresting activists, including climate activists, including left-wing and right-wing activists at the whim of whatever government happens to be in power at that time. And to be honest, isn't this the entire purpose of the European Union? The entire purpose of the European Union is to install a giant continent-sized bureaucracy to manage people's interactions between one another in a way that just destroys the economy. That's pretty much... If we just take for a second the proposal before you start typing angry comments about how we shouldn't have left the European Union and stuff like that, that's not the argument I'm making. The argument I'm making, I mean, I do believe that the EU is a kind of proto-superstate. It's very weird to me that people who are anti-nationalist will wave EU flags. They don't seem to realise that they are nationalists. They're just nationalists for something even bigger and more centralized than a nation, which is insane to me. It's some kind of cultural thing where we just assume that if you're pro-EU, it means you're a nice person, which is 24-karat bollocks. Let's read a little bit more. Security vulnerabilities. Tiwari, speaking in an online discussion, said that law enforcement and intelligence agencies in Europe have pressed for government devices to be exempt from mandatory scanning. Okay, it's one rule for you and another one for us. Isn't that just going to enable, like, government paedophile rings and things like that? The proposals are likely to face legal challenges if they're enacted. Yeah, because, look, the EU, at the end of the day, just wants to install a bureaucrat to moderate every single interaction that everyone does, and that is its justification, essentially, for existing. It starts with something like, well, wouldn't this be nice? Shouldn't we do this? Isn't this the way forward? It's a new technology. You know, we're forward-thinking. But in actual fact, what they're really doing is installing something that is authoritarian, totally unnecessary, and very negative for the economy. That's why Europe's talent goes to the United States. Speaking of the United States, let's listen to this.
Like that with, if you take a look, Argentina. If the president doesn't win, I know the person that he'd be running against, I believe, probably. We probably have the person. The person is extremely far left and a philosophy that got Argentina into this problem in the first place. So we would not be generous with Argentina if that happened. If he loses, we are not going to be generous with Argentina.
Now, so I do understand the president's point on one angle, and Argentina is, in my opinion, kind of unaware of why it's in the problem that it's in. It likes to blame the US, sometimes with good reason and sometimes not. But what I don't think is appropriate is that Trump is saying that he will only help this country and the people of this country. Remember, fundamentally, it should be the people of the country, if the president that he likes wins the next election. So that tells me something quite dark, something quite disturbing and sad about the state of foreign international relations, where Donald Trump is trying to spread an ideology, for better or for worse. And he's got deals with Milei that have to do with natural resources, have to do with United States advantageous policies and things like this, deals that they've been doing. And obviously there's nothing wrong with deals, but what he's effectively saying here is, if we can't just keep doing this in the same way, I won't be friends with your country and its 40 million people anymore. So this just stinks to me of a kind of aristocratic attitude. Because surely, if you're going to be pledging to help a country, you should be pledging to help its people fundamentally. Not an ideology, not a particular person in charge, not just for the resources either. And it really just looks like this strange kind of favoritism, which to me is dystopian, because it's not really super democratic, is it? Anyway, I want you guys to tell me whether you agree with my interpretation of these stories. Do they count as dystopian for you? And more than anything, I don't really know what to do with the format of this show. I mean, I'm thinking about doing maybe a monthly episode, doing it as a live stream. But then on the other hand, I could totally see doing like one segment daily or something like that. If you have any kind of idea, leave a comment, let me know. And yeah, try to survive the dystopia. See you next week. No fucking digital IDs. We'll leave it at that. Terence McKenna used to say that the internet would be this free, open, intercommunication, a kind of utopia, but we all know it's become a dystopia. Those old school internet ethics died out. Now every site is full of pop-ups, data grabs, and forcing you to make an account. And we don't do any of that. That's the whole point. This was first created amongst the team, and we decided to make it public because it's just so useful. All the code is open source. If you have any use for any of these things, image resizing, audio trimming, small caps, etc., I think that our site could be quite a useful tool for you, and it's also downloadable as an app. It's tools.apolloniani.uk. No fucking digital IDs, we'll leave it at that.